used to be best friends, used to do good things together. Oh no, but no more.
It's just a distant memory.
My homie, buddy, cousin, it all just fell apart. I'm sorry.
Nah, I'm not sorry.
It's just a distant memory. Yeah, yeah. Come on, my lady, say good, bestie. Check out, come on, check out, come on, my lady, say good, bestie. Check out, come on, check out, come on, my lady, say good, bestie. Check out, come on, check out, come on.
Hello.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, what's up? How are you doing?
Doing very well, thanks. And yourself?
I'm very well. You really keep to time.
We have to. We absolutely. This is serious business.
Of course. Of course.
I'm assuming you're ready and good to go.
Yes, I am.
Welcome to the Feeling Station.
Thank you. Thank you.
For those listening to this podcast for the first time, it's a romantic family and friendship breakup podcast showcasing stories people would like to talk about with the view to give lessons from their experiences. Now, I hope you find today's story entertaining, but more importantly, meaningful. And the podcast is popular for two main reasons. The first being I do my best to keep my guests anonymous. So I picked up a name for you from Malawi that you're going to use for the duration of this episode. Are you ready for this one?
Yes.
Right. So your name is Chikondi. And
Okay.
yeah, I'm pretty sure you know somebody called Chikondi somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
I thought so. We all kind of do. Your name is Chikondi, and that means love. And it's normally given to someone who's considered to be loving and have a nurturing spirit about them. So that's your name, Chikondi. And what are you calling the person you're talking about today?
So I was lazy to look for a name. I'll just call her Bestie because she was my best friend.
Oh,
Yeah.
She was. Oh, yeah, I love this. I haven't had a friendship breakup in a long time. So this
Can
is.
I just correct that? He's my best friend.
Oh, okay, fine.
Yes. Yes.
I haven't had a friendship one in a long time. So this comes at a really, really, really good moment. Thanks for that. So this is about Chikondi and Bestie. And the second reason why the podcast is doing really well is they're real life lessons that people are going to learn from the story that you're going to share today. So what would you like anybody listening to walk away with?
I struggled a bit with this one. Initially, I had one, but as I was just trying to come up with the highlights, I came up with three.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one is that people are largely redeemable.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I like that a lot. I'll let you finish if you wanted to expand on that before I comment.
Yes. So just to explain it a bit, I think in general, people do have the potential to change and improve. With the right circumstances, effort and guidance, I think people are deserving of second chances and can become better people.
People are largely redeemable as long as they want the redemption in the first place.
Yeah, and sorry, just to expand on that a little bit, I also feel like we really are living in a culture of, canceling people,
yes.
but I don't think that's the best way of going about relationships. Sometimes we need to give people a second chance or even a third one.
Yeah.
Obviously within reason. So, yeah.
Cool. Second lesson?
The second lesson is that privilege can thwart the development of emotional intelligence.
Hey, all the college words are being dropped today, yeah? Okay.
Leave me alone, Tinto.
I like that. And then what's your third lesson?
The third one is yearning does not equal jealousy.
You see, some of these things are too deep for us. I'm guessing you're going to expand on that.
Okay,
I kind of get the sense of it because you can yearn to have something and it doesn't mean that you're jealous of someone or something. It's just something that you aspire towards.
Yes.
Right?
Well, you've just expanded it for me because that's exactly what I was going to say.
Nice. So I'll just play your lessons back. Number one, people are largely redeemable. Number two, privilege can thwart the development of emotional intelligence. And number 3, yearning does not equal jealousy.
Yes.
Cool. Let's get into it then. Chikondi, how did you and Bestie become friends? Walk us through your history.
Okay, so we've been friends for 22 years now.
Wow.
Obviously, this is including the time that we broke up, which I'll get to later.
Yeah.
But we've known each other for 22 years. We met in high school when we started high school. And then we were close friends, but not necessarily best friends. You know how high school is a bit cliquey.
Mm-hmm.
So we were in the same clique, good friends, but not best friends.
So cliques in high school are usually because maybe both parents of the clique are all rich, so they click on material stuff. Or a clique can be guys who all play really well in sports. Or a clique could be people that just like gossiping. What was your clique about with her? What made your guys' clique be a clique?
To be honest, I can't quite place it because that actually goes to part of what I was going to expand on us meeting, that she was a cool kid and I don't think I was a cool kid. And when I say cool kid, I mean it with respect to the criteria that was used in high school. So she was pretty, she was attractive, she played sport. I, on the other hand, didn't necessarily consider myself pretty, and I believe the people around me didn't either. Similarly, I also didn't play sport. I was intelligent, yes. I was funny, yes, but I never considered myself a cool kid.
Right.
So that also forms the context that we met, which I think plays a role in everything that I'm going to expand on. Mm-hmm. So I think that on its own meant there were certain things that she had privileges that I did not necessarily have. At the same time, it also meant that our experiences, although we were experiencing life together, were different. You know, she would basically benefit from pretty privilege in so many senses of the word, when I, on the other hand, was not necessarily like that. So at this point, obviously, I did not, to me, that was a fact, but not a factor. So I knew that she was cool, I'm not cool, we're friends, good friends. It didn't really make me feel inferior, and I don't think it also, I don't think we were aware of the complexities surrounding that difference.
I was just gonna comment and say what you've described is all the reason why you wouldn't be part of the clique, or you guys wouldn't be in the same clique. It just seems somewhat oxymoronish. Hey, I was dying to drop in the college words also. But I get it.
Yeah. So we were good friends to the extent that our families, like, we were known in each other's families. Her parents, my parents, siblings, they knew us. Then we moved on to the last 2 years of high school. We went to different schools. So we were not really, technology was not easily accessible. Then from there, we went on to university. But when we went to university, she went straight to university from high school. I took a gap year. So by the time I then started, she had already been in uni for a year. And we were in the same country, but different cities. So by virtue of that, being in the same country compared to the rest of our other friends, we became closer. Hence, we became best friends.
Right, yes. Got it.
Yeah. And by this time also, social media was more accessible, so we were communicating a little bit more. So during this stage of university, it wasn't very eventful, but I think there are two things that I just want to point out pertaining our relationship. My parents in university would just give me a lump sum right at the beginning of the school semester. So the 4 months worth of rent, groceries, my allowance for everything else. So at any given point, it meant that I almost always had a surplus in terms of money.
Right.
On the other hand, her parents would give her monthly allowances for her expenses. So what it meant is on a couple of occasions, she would probably be short of money, she would run out of money, or she would be waiting for money. And in those instances, she would reach out and say, oh, can I have some money? I'll give you back whenever. And when she would borrow the money, sometimes she wouldn't really pay back at the time that she would say that she's paying back. But it was never an issue for me because I always had something on the side. Yeah, eventually she would pay back, but maybe just not at the stipulated time.
Okay,
and it was not an issue. But I'm bringing it up because of what then happened later. So fast forward to my final year of, she went on straight to do her master's. So again, when I was doing my final year, she was doing her master's. Fast forward to my final year of university, my final semester, my parents went through some financial issues. There was a family emergency, so they needed to channel all the money there. And unlike the previous semesters where they would give me all the money, this time around, they only paid for half of the semester for my accommodation and the rest of it. So I kind of had to really be frugal and, be very cautious with the way I used money. But even as such, I still got to a point where I ran out of money and then I asked her for money. When I asked her for money, she already knew my situation. So I explained, you already know what's happening. But because I paid deposit when I moved here, and it's quite a huge amount, I'm confident that when they pay me back, I'll be able to pay you back. So if I get something from home before then, I'll give you. But at the very least, I will be able to pay you back when I'm now moving out, when I'm done with school. Cool. She gave me the money. A couple of weeks later, I can't remember because this is so many years ago, but what I know, it was before the time for me to move out. So she says, hi, have you got the money? And then I said, oh, no, I don't. As I explained, when I borrowed the money, I will be giving you the money when I move out. Then she says, oh, okay, well, I hope you can make a plan because I really need to use the money. And I said, okay. Then she said, there are these pair of shoes that I've always wanted, and they're really expensive. But I just discovered that they're on sale, so I really need to buy them before somebody else buys them. And I also know that if I miss this sale, I may not be able to afford them because they're expensive. That's why I really need the money. At this point, I was taken aback a bit because I was thinking to myself, of course, you have to give Caesar what belongs to Caesar. But, and also just because I don't have food on the table does not necessarily mean that someone's need for an extra pair of shoes is not a priority.
Yeah.
But it made me question that, to what extent or what exactly do we owe each other as people, but more so as friends, right? And I asked myself those questions because I wasn't sure whether my feelings and expectations were justified. And I generally believe that what distinguishes relationships is the sacrificial nature of the relationships. So what I mean is, the reason why this person is a colleague and this one an acquaintance and a friend and a best friend is the level that I'm willing to extend myself for their sake, even if it comes with some minor inconveniences.
That's right.
Anyway, I hustled my way out and I managed to give her back the money. But for me, I think this is when now I started really thinking about the conduct within our relationship and how things were just playing out. Then the second thing also, which happened during the university, is unfortunately for me, I had a series of, bad romantic encounters. And I say encounters because not all of them were relationships. So sometimes someone would be interested in me or out fleeing with someone or whatever. And unfortunately...
I know this is not about anything romantic, but was there a common thing that came out of all those encounters?
Well, now that I'm older and wiser, I think one thing that I'll say for sure is I loved people who didn't love me. I think that was really just the main thing.
Okay.
Yeah. So, when we would then be talking, either just her and I or in a group of friends, maybe people are having discussions, and say, for example, I want to comment on something about a relationship. she would really give these snide remarks like, but you can't possibly know how a healthy relationship is like because you've never been with a healthy guy, like things like that. And or sometimes she'd be like, oh no, Chikondi can tell the story best. She's been with a series of guys that are funny. Yeah. So for me, I really just thought, wow, this is both instances, I think, were like opened me up to the realization that my friend may not really, she perceives, maybe she perceives her circumstances differently from mine, or maybe she actually fails to relate and acknowledge my circumstances. Yeah. So again, fast forward, we then finished university because I was now finishing my undergrad and she was still doing a master's. I finished and went on the job market before she did. So I went back home, like our home country, started looking for a job. And, with the situation, the unemployment situation, it wasn't easy. I spent that entire year looking for a job, not getting anything. On the other hand, she then finished school, then came back home to look for a job. So when she started looking for a job, I started obviously giving her tips like, this has been my experience. I think this and that and this. In giving her tips, I then mentioned, because earlier on I'd gotten an opportunity that was not in my field, but I had declined it because it was early on in my job hunt. So my reasoning was that if I can get this, that's not even in my field early on, then certainly I can get something in my field. But later on, I realized that it didn't work out that way. So I then sort of just told her, you may need to stay open to other opportunities that are not necessarily in your line of work. And you may also need to stay open to opportunities that may not necessarily be paying you exactly what you expect for entry level, given the circumstances in the country. So just use that as a stepping stone, build your networks, get the money and experience, and, build it from there. Then she says, well, for you, it would be acceptable because you only have an undergraduate degree, but I have a master's degree. So I don't think it makes sense for me to be working and getting that little. Again, this for me was like, okay, there's so many people who have more advanced qualifications and experience getting far much less. Maybe in some ways I was imposing and I had expected a certain response, but I thought, I still think that it was more to do with how it was said rather than what was said. Yes. So even though she may have had a standard to say, I will not settle for anything less than this, that's great. We are entitled to our standards. But how you communicate them, especially when the other person is exactly in that position, should not be then something that comes off as demeaning.
Right, yeah.
So, yeah, fortunately, again, because of privilege, because she was politically connected, she got a job. Like, a few months into the search, she got a job. Now, I think this was the triggering point for me where I was really beginning to bring together all these different experiences and encounters. When she got this job, I was so happy. Imagine, one of yours making it, and it meant a great deal. So we celebrated, and I'm going to bring in a third person here. Let's call her Batanai.
Okay.
So Batanai is also one of the people that we have been friends with all along. So we're still very close friends, all of us, like the three of us.
Was she in the same clique?
Back in high school, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And
so,
and was she part of that clique because she was pretty, she had privilege? What about her made her fit the clique?
Definitely pretty, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So Bata and I, because of the line of profession that she chose, she had started working way before we did. And when she started working, she was the kind of person who would be like, oh, let's go out, and would be like, we don't have money. Then she'll be like, oh no, don't worry, I'll cover you, or let's do something that fits whatever little budget you have, just to make sure that we hang out together. So again, maybe on my part, the build up of expectations, I'm thinking, oh, my friend has made it, whatever is hers is also mine. Yeah. Then she started working and she would be like, oh, let's do this and that. Mind you, this is at a time when, remember, my family had a financial hit like just in the last semester. So we're still recovering. My family doesn't have any money for me to just be hanging out, and I'm not working. So every time she would invite me to somewhere, I would be like, oh no, actually, I don't have money for that, or whatever money I have, this is not really a priority. There wasn't any effort, at least from where I stood, there was no effort to say, it's okay, let's do this thing that's low budget or zero budget, or let me pay for you and let's hang out anyway. To her, it was so easy to say, okay, you don't have the money. Let me reach out to another friend and we'll do this. So that was the order of the day. On the other hand, Matt and I, my bestie and I, we are in the same WhatsApp group, just the three of us. Remember, she's gotten a job. And this job was quite, it meant she was meeting a lot of prominent people, the nature of the job. So like in the group, she would send messages of, oh, guys, today I met so-and-so, we're having lunch with so-and-so. Today, this is my outfit for the day. Office days, like, her work became the primary subject of conversation in the group. At this point, I am battling with internal feelings because I'm genuinely happy for my friend, but I'm beginning to feel I'm beginning to have some negative feelings, which I didn't have the language for them then. The only thing that I could think of was, am I jealous of my friend? Because I'm supposed to be celebrating her. I'm supposed to be happy when she's sending these pictures. But it almost seems like when she sends these pictures, something inside me is triggered negatively. Could I be jealous of her? But I didn't vocalize it. So
describe that feeling to me if you can, or those feelings.
So I was feeling hurt, first of all, because of the fact that it almost seemed like I was in a state where I couldn't fully celebrate my friend because she has gotten a job within 4 months. Meanwhile, I've been here for 14 months trying to get a job and I can't get the job. On the other hand, I knew for sure that I was happy for her that she's got this job. And just because she's got this job and I want a job doesn't mean that I don't want a job for her. I don't know if that makes sense.
Kind of. But whenever I've felt hurt, it's because something has happened to me. You've just described as feeling hurt because something has happened to someone else. That would be empathy. I'll be empathizing with them.
No, but in this case, she has something to celebrate, so I wouldn't be empathizing in the sense of feeling hurt for her.
Yeah. So, which is why I'm struggling with how you've described feeling hurt. I don't know. All I'm saying is I don't know if hurt is the right thing to describe. But then it's your feeling, so I need to be sensitive to how you feel. You felt, and you say you felt hurt, but I'm just saying, if I've ever felt hurt, it's because something has happened to me personally. And if something has happened to somebody else and I feel hurt for them, that feeling of engaging and putting myself in their shoes would be empathy. And you're certainly not empathizing.
Of course,
nor are you experiencing something that has happened to you. So is there possibly a different word you could use to describe how you're feeling? Because I know you're steering away from saying that you felt jealous and you didn't know where they felt jealous, or you didn't. But I don't know if you certainly felt hurt.
Yeah, I don't know. I think at this point, I also, from what you've explained, I wouldn't have the vocabulary for it as well. Yeah.
Okay.
And then obviously I was feeling guilty because I did think, if I am jealous, why am I jealous of my friend? Right. So I kept these things to myself because I don't want to say this. And obviously I don't think, then I didn't think there was a way of saying it without obviously just seeming jealous. What then happened is, because this is all happening also in the group, Batanai then comes to my inbox and says, are you okay? And then I said, why? Then she said, oh, I just sense that, Bestie is overdoing this whole getting a job thing. And I know you've been looking for a job for a long time. And I'm just trying to put myself in your shoes. So this then validated my feelings like, okay, I'm not crazy. Because if she can see this, and if she can empathize, now I think the word empathize is where it would come in. If she can empathize with me, then this is a genuine feeling, an expected feeling given the circumstances. Remember that what was triggering me was not that my bestie had gotten a job, but it was that she had then made her job the primary topic of conversation where our engagements were concerned.
So I've just I've just done something. Just look at the difference between jealousy and envy, right?
Yes.
And envy is described as characteristic where somebody wants something that someone else has, and they're not having it for themselves, and there's a desire to have it. Did you desire having a job?
I did. So if you recall, one of the lessons I said yearning does not equal jealousy.
Yeah.
The reason why I shied away from envy is I feel envy still has that connotation of, yes, I desire that, but I desire it at all costs, even if it means you not having it, which is not what I'm experiencing. Whereas yearning, I think there's a fine balance of saying, I want that, but I also want it for you too. Yes, but yeah, I mean,
it's interesting because when I go further down to what they describe envy to be, it says it typically involves two parties.
Well, it's possible.
then it adds you and another person. Nice. I mean, I'm not saying you were envious. Yearning, I guess, could actually work. I just thought I'd blurt it out. It's not relevant to this. I just thought I'd mention it because I had done the search. But yes, please go on.
So when my friend then, Batanai, when she then, said this, I was like, why would you think that? Then she just, broke it down the way that I've broken it down, that, there's so many situations in life where sometimes you've been struggling to get something, then it feels like or looks like someone has gotten it easier. And if that person is not careful with how they, communicate what they have, it may really then it may magnify your need and your yearning for this thing in a way that you would then even struggle to fully celebrate them. And I was like, actually, I've been going through this, but I didn't want to talk about it because I felt I was feeling guilty because in my mind, I'm thinking, am I jealous of my friend? And if I'm jealous of my friend, why is that the case when this person is my friend? So after that, I then just, I started with withdrawing. Not so much, I suppose everything was happening at the same time. Remember, we're not hanging out a lot anymore because she's hanging out with people that can afford the activities that she wants to do. On the other hand, I am also dealing with this internal conflict of what I'm going through and trying to address it. That also just created an emotional rift between us. So we were drifting apart physically as well as emotionally.
Is it because you didn't want to hear her flexing about the job anymore? What was your reason for pulling away?
So that plus other things. I didn't want to hear about her flexing about the job because to me, it also then was coming off as a complete disregard of my circumstances.
Yeah.
Because even as we are flexing, we need to be mindful of how the people around us are experiencing life, which ties to my second lesson where privilege can really thwart our ability to be emotionally intelligent and relate to other people's experiences in a way that allows us to communicate and conduct ourselves in such a way that is not only acceptable, but that is considerate of them.
Right.
So, yes, that is part of the reason. But even if I had wanted to, I didn't have the money to do the things that she wanted to do. So I still want to get to the core of why you wanted to move away then. It's because you didn't want to have the pressure again of saying, we're getting tired of saying, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes. Yeah. So, slowly but surely, one text every other day led to one text every week up until it was completely non-existent. And I was also going through other things in my life at that point. So I remember I decided to actually leave the country for a bit just to go and deal with my life situations.
What else was
When I
going
left,
on?
I had broken up with I just broken up with my boyfriend of 2 years then.
Because
He just woke up and broke up with me.
oh,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
right.
So there was that and this failing friendship and still the struggles of looking for a job.
Mm.
And I needed some space.
Hey, that's a lot, you know.
It
Come to
is.
think of it, it really is a lot to be
It
dealing
is.
with that at the same time.
It is. It is. Yeah.
So, did you say you decided to leave the country?
Yes, and coincidentally and fortunately, when I got into the new country, as I was putting a new SIM card for that country, my phone just died. Like, just died. It didn't fall. It didn't. Nothing happened. It just wouldn't switch on. So I then thought to myself, "Well, this is a good start for sure, and the break that I needed." I never bothered to get a new phone. I just stayed offline for 3 months.
Where did you get the money to leave and travel for 3 months and stay in a
My
foreign country?
So I went to a country where I have a sibling who's in that country. So she basically just got me a ticket to go there. But in terms of my day-to-day expenses, I was living with my sibling, eating what they were eating,
Okay.
sleeping where they were.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah. So I was offline, off the grid for 3 months. Occasionally, I would log into, say, Facebook and just reach out to a couple of people, but for the greater part, I was not available. So this meant what was already a dying friendship then really just died. By the time I got back home, like left the country and went back home, and luckily, as I'm getting back, I also then got a job. So now I'm working, but at this point, there's no communication. The only thing that I remember vividly was that our workplaces were a few blocks apart. I knew this because remember, she had already gotten a job before I did. And at this time, even though we weren't talking, I still would get some information and updates about her life directly and indirectly. What I mean is sometimes directly I would ask Bat and I, like, how's so and so doing? What's she up to and whatever. And then indirectly, our friendship was quite well known. Like everyone around us knew that we were friends. So sometimes maybe people would just want to be digging for information or to hurt me or to whatever. They'll be like, oh, how are you guys doing? I saw you were, say, in Cape Town. And I'm like, actually, I was not part of the people that were in Cape Town. So that's how sometimes I would get updates about her life. But what then
So,
happened?
just whilst you're on that, so you say you would get information directly and indirectly.
Yes.
I'm going to come to that in a second. But first up, you've given no sense of how when you got back into the country, you had a job. You made me feel like whilst you were away, you weren't looking for a job because you were off the grid. But suddenly now, when you get back in the country, you've got a job. How did that happen?
So the application processes take long. Before I left the country 3 months back, I'd been applying for jobs. So I then came back. I was then called for an interview for one of the jobs that I'd applied for before. And it was, by the time I did the interview and was done with it, they didn't take long to give me feedback.
Right.
So I
Okay.
think, like maybe a month getting back home, I then got I did the interview and then got the feedback that I got the job.
Okay, cool. Got it.
Yeah.
And then back to the directly and indirectly one. If I'm to talk about something directly, I would assume it's one-on-one. So if I got questions about a best friend I don't talk to anymore and I said I spoke to them directly, I'm assuming I would have spoken to them one by one, one-to-one. But you've gone through Batanai.
Yes.
And it
yes.
sounds like you were initiating the questions.
Yes, in some of the instances.
Why did you care? When you're the one who pulled away and you had to leave?
So sometimes we walk away to protect ourselves in those moments, but it doesn't mean we don't care about the people. I was reaching out directly because I genuinely cared about my friend. I loved her. But in addition to that, I also just, the hope was that when I would say, oh, how's she doing? Maybe the response would be, oh, she was also asking about you, just to see if that level of concern and care is both ways.
Well, that's indirect because you're going through someone.
Okay, again, semantics. What I meant by direct and indirect is that sometimes I'm the one who'd actually solicit for the information, when in other instances, people would just give me the information without me asking about it.
Was there a level of embarrassment in talking to her one-on-one, or a level of discomfort you're potentially trying to protect yourself from?
Discomfort, certainly, because when I then got back, the point I was getting to when I said I got a job, our workplaces were a few blocks apart. And one thing I remember vividly, Tinto, even up to now, is the amount of anxiety I would feel walking to and from work. Like I would literally just, scurry away like so fast, just not to bump into her. Because in my mind, I guess I associated, I knew the question of why did you withdraw would come. I didn't want to have to explain everything that I've just explained to you, because on one hand, I had not resolved my feelings, but on the other hand, I didn't have the language for it. And then I also didn't want that continued feeling of being, for lack of a better word, demeaned. Because remember the things that I've spoken about, like how I would be labeled the one with the crappy relationships or the one with just an undergraduate degree, that made me feel inferior. So I felt like every encounter with her is an opportunity for me to be demeaned, and I didn't want that.
I see.
So yes, to answer your question, I was not ready for any one-on-one confrontations with her, or even engagements, not confrontations. So even if I genuinely just wanted to know what she's up to, I would have then rather gone through someone else than to go directly to her. And I felt safe with Batanai because she knew the context of everything that was happening.
So yes, so you used to scurry away, and you try and avoid meeting her. It's interesting how you're curious about somebody's life, but at the same time you also don't want to meet them.
Yeah, but people do that, eh? With time, I've learned that this is actually a common practice. But I also think people do that when they care, usually. So whether they care positively or negatively, that's when they do that. When you just don't care about someone, you just don't care. You won't look for information on their life. So yeah, fast forward again, she then gets married. Again, I am getting this information from the people around me, whether I've solicited for it or not. Then the wedding day comes, and I get an invite to the wedding. I was so conflicted on whether to go or not. Remember, I have these feelings again that I'm trying to avoid.
You got the wedding invite directly from your bestie?
Yes. So during the time that this is now in the second year of not talking, I must say that on both my birthdays in those years, she had sent me a message. So she still had my number. I didn't have a number. I deleted the number at some point. But then she then sent me a message and an invite to her wedding directly.
So you're saying you didn't get those birthday messages?
No, I did. I'm saying I deleted a number. I didn't block her. I just did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you got the birthday messages, did you reconnect? Hi, thank you. Yeah, it's nice. I'm back. What happened each time you got those birthday messages?
It was exactly that. Hi, thank you. This is nice of you. I hope you're fine. That's that.
Okay. So it wasn't complete radio silence over the 2 years. It was just limited conversation between the two.
To be fair, outside of the birthdays, there was no other communication. So we'd literally just talk on my birthday. I never sent her messages on her birthday because I was trying to avoid to communicate with her.
You're confusing me, you know.
Why?
Because on one hand, you're really asking about her. And then on the other, when there's an opportunity and what seems like there's an open door for you guys to say, hey, look, we're cool. I'm thinking about you. This is your happy birthday. It would in my opinion, it would soften whatever it is that may have been very difficult to deal with. Did you feel nice when you got those messages?
I did. What made me feel nice was that I had the assurance that I probably was important to her the
Yeah.
same way she was important to me.
Yeah.
But remember, I did not have the language for what I had gone through, which had not only started with the job situation, but was primarily triggered by the job situation. So I knew that even getting back into being friends would mean that either I have to talk about it, I have to be tolerant of it, or she has to change. If none of these three things happened, then we'd still find ourselves in a position, or rather, I would find myself in a position where I would still be uncomfortable just being around her and feeling all sorts of things. Because it wasn't.
Is that an assumption that you made on your own? And I'm only saying this because a few episodes back, I've forgotten the number, but I think it's episode 187. I think. No, 184. Episode 184, right?
Mm-hmm.
I got a friend of mine who basically told me, not directly, that, look, I'm in a relationship and the guy that I have is a controlling cat. I got to cut you off. Right,
I listened to that one.
right, and she cut me off completely, and I was clueless that she got married and that she'd been through all of the stuff that she did. But on the day that she came back, because it's happened to me before, I was conscious how I needed to deal with her. I needed to extend grace, welcome her in, and then allow her to talk about whatever if she wanted to. But I'd have never asked the questions because I got the sense she would have been uncomfortable. Why are you assuming that would have been the case with Bestie? Why weren't you looking at it from the angle that, well, maybe let me just say whatever I have to, and she might be more forgiving than I think?
I don't know. I suppose in that at that time, I really felt like there was no way that I was going to say what I wanted to say without it being misinterpreted. So I didn't want that risk. And I didn't want anything else that would then come as a result of that.
Is this because this is something you would have done if it was on the other shoe? Because you're pretty much making a decision for her, and you have no idea what she would have said.
Of course, I mean, like it's interesting. Can I continue, and then maybe your questions will be answered as I go?
Cool.
Yes. So anyway, like when I got the invite, I was anxious as usual because I didn't want any possible engagements with her. And I contemplated going and not going. On one end, I felt like, is she inviting me because out of obligation? Remember, we had more or less the same friends, all of whom had been invited. So in my mind, I did think maybe she's just inviting me because we have similar friends and it would be wrong for me to be the only one we've got the same friends and it would be wrong for me to be the only one who's not invited. Eventually, I went to the wedding. Obviously, at a wedding, you don't really get a one-on-one interaction per se. One thing I can say that was a bit awkward was I was sitting on the aisle row. And you know how when the ceremony is done, the bride and groom walk back and sometimes the guests give them a hug, a handshake or whatever. So I remember reaching out as if I want to give a hug, then holding back. Then she also did the same. And then there was a lot of back and forth hesitancy. And eventually we didn't give each other a hug.
You didn't?
No, we didn't. Because it was like, I know, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if she remembers it, but obviously I remember it because I was in that state of mind. Then fast forward again, she had a baby and she had a baby shower and all of that. I didn't go. I was just trying to limit my level of engagement. When the baby came, everyone else, again, our other friends went to see the baby, gifts and all of that. And out of obligation, I then said, you know what? Let me just go because this would not look good. In fact, remember, I'm trying to also, the reason why I don't even want to tell about everything that's going on is because I don't want to be perceived as jealous. But the more I continue to move away from celebrating a moment, then for sure it's going to be interpreted as jealousy. So because I was anxious, I gathered some people to go with me. So my sister, my friend, I didn't want it to be just her and I was hoping that it would be as short as possible. Surprisingly, though, what was meant to be an hour's visit became like 4 hours. There was no awkwardness. There was nothing. Like things just like we picked up from where we left essentially. So this part, I suppose, also answers your question, is that I was definitely making assumptions about how she would receive me. Because when I then went to say congratulations, things were well. I then saved her number. All along, I hadn't saved her number. I was just communicating with her without saving her number. So now I saved her number and we started talking slowly but surely, like, our interactions became more frequent. We even then started, doing dates again. She would invite me to her house and we would hang out. We never spoke about what happened back then. We just just hit it off and things were great. However, in things being great, that those issues that were there before are still there, just in different contexts.
Right.
So I'm going to give a couple of examples of how these issues were manifesting. I was driving a small car, and she came up with a running joke about, oh, these cars, like this type of cars, and I didn't care about it. But the one thing that then really hit me hard was when they were considering restructuring and just priority setting in their household. So they were trying to downgrade their cars. And she outrightly said, oh, we're looking at downgrading, but I would never downgrade to this type of car.
Yeesh.
Because it's like, it's just not it.
Wow.
Like,
Okay.
yeah. The lowest I can go is this type of car. And she's telling me with that exact car.
Wow.
And in my mind, like, okay, what's this about? And then another thing was on weight. Nowadays people are very conscious about their weight. I've always generally been on the heavier side. So again, she would always talk about, I really think people who are heavy, they don't take care of themselves. They just, let themselves go and all of that. And I mean, I've been heavy for most of my life, so I really don't care about people's opinions, but I would expect that a person who's close to me would use me as a reference point to inform their opinions.
Wow.
But when they still feed from general opinions, when I'm right there, if you say heavy people are lazy, but I'm not lazy, what exactly are you trying to say? If you say heavy people eat too much, but very well that I don't eat too much. So there were a lot of, things like that. Similarly with jobs, when initially we reconnected, I was still with my first job, the one that I told you I got.
Yeah.
Again, there were references to, by then she had moved on and, was focusing on other things in life. If I'm to ever go back in the corporate space, I would never do this kind of job. And that's the exact job that I have.
You were doing. Oh my days.
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Okay. Right.
So again, going back to maybe just trying to bring the lessons into perspective, that privilege really towards the development of emotional intelligence, because you are supposed to be able to relate with people and communicate with them from a point of their position. If I am talking to someone who doesn't have what I have, I need to know how I speak to them and not just, blurt out anything. Then, life is life. It humbles us all. At some point, tables turned for them and her, and certain things that she would speak against. And I say this in all regards, from the weight. I mean, now she's a mother, she's gaining weight and all of that stuff. So she's really putting in the effort, she's working out, she's eating right, but the weight is not going. And I'm like, oh, by the way, now you see, you can actually be doing the work, but the results may not show.
And you said this to her?
Yes, but not as I've just said it.
How did you say it?
I just said it in general that, actually sometimes you do try. Like, look, I've been trying to do this and that and this for these many years, and it's not working in the same way that you are trying to do this. But sometimes the results are slow. But you just need to keep on trying
At this
or try
point,
other things.
at this point, did you feel good that she was gaining weight based on what she had said to you before? How did you feel for her?
I felt good, not that she was gaining weight, but that she was learning the other way of life.
Right.
So this would have been the same even if she was learning from other people's experiences. It's unfortunate that she had to learn from her personal experiences. So yes, I definitely felt good.
Okay.
And without really getting into the details of her life, this then just went through and through with regards to other aspects of her life. So even the same car that she was like, oh, I would never, eventually became the one that,
She ended up driving.
She ended up driving, yeah. And even the jobs that she said she would never ended up being also the jobs that she ended up going back to go back to the corporate space. Now, the time I remember I called you last year wanting to talk about this.
Yeah.
Yes. So what then happened is there were then other engagements in her life where people then vocalized her lack of emotional intelligence. And she came to me saying, you know what, I'm so stressed right now. In a space of this much time, these many people have come up to me and just said, you are not it. The way you interact with people is not right. Can you please tell me honestly what you think about what they said? Do you think I'm this person? So I then took this as the opportunity to speak about issues that I'd never spoken about. I then told her, you know what? Before I even get into whether this is true or not, I want you to know that you're my friend and I love you. And me breaking up with you that last time was precisely because of this. In so many ways, when I was interacting with you, I felt demeaned. I felt like you were not empathetic towards me. So it made it very difficult to celebrate certain moments where I was supposed to be the happiest person for you. But that then just went away because of the way you chose to communicate or to conduct yourself or, just engage yourself where this is concerned. So yes, these people are right. Having said that, I think at the end of the day, we have been, because I think from the time that we got back together to date, it's been 5 years now, 4 or 5 years. And I did tell her, you know what, there are so many instances in between where you have still gone and done the same thing that, that triggered me to withdraw in the first place. But I told myself, if I'm going to make this friendship work, I needed to be tolerant. I needed maybe to also, to an extent, to be communicative. I tried communicating this. I gave instances in these instances. And now this is another opportunity that I have to communicate this. And you know what she said? She said, I genuinely did not know that this is the kind of person that I was. If only you had told me. If only you had told me, I would have changed. I am so sorry that you felt this way and you even felt the need to not talk to me for 2 good years because of this. But now that you've said this, and I've heard it also from other people, I'll be working on myself. But don't ever feel that if I'd say something, because I also even then told her about the car, that day you said you would never drive a car like this, and yet that's the car that I drive. What does this mean? So she was like, oh no, to be honest, I thought, because we already had a running joke on the car, I thought it was a joke. But now I realize how it would have affected you. So yeah, when I talk about people being largely redeemable, I do think that certainly people deserve second chances. So yeah, that's basically it.
That is incredibly powerful. It really is when I think about where your bestie is now. And as you are unfolding the story, I haven't spoken about this book in a long time because at some point I felt I was overdoing it, which is the 4 Agreements. So those who listen to the podcast, I'm sorry, but we're back here because it's got 3 very important components. The first one is be impeccable with your word, where they basically
Yes.
where they basically say be careful how you say things to people,
Mm-hmm.
because you could be spreading what they call emotional poison.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? You were poisoned by her words.
Mm-hmm.
So she wasn't impeccable with her words. It became poison for you. And then, but when you look at attachment styles, right? For instance, the anxious avoidance style kind of manifests itself with people who have a fear of intimacy once they get too close and they feel burnt, maybe because of what people say because of words. And then they have a level of anxiety in reconnecting, and they have difficulty with emotional regulation, which I think might be the challenge you're having with the difference between jealousy and envious. And I'm not psychoanalyzing this, but I've been in a position before where I've been anxious avoidant with the situation I had to deal with personally. And a lot of what you were saying was my reality once upon a time. And one of the things that was particularly problematic was one, the impeccability with the words, which gave emotional poison. I think that's what happened to you. You were poisoned by her choice of words. But then what that led me to do was to take things personally, which is what this book encourages you not to do. It strongly encourages you not to take things personally, because what you're doing is absorbing somebody else's privilege that you've mentioned. So privilege allows you to be reckless sometimes.
Yeah.
And we see this in so many formats globally. People with privilege are usually most reckless with their words, and because they got money to pay to make it okay, they do it. But what you're doing is, if you take personally what is happening and what they're saying to you, you're just literally absorbing what they are taking on their end and taking out on you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I got a friend who was abused when they were young. And as a result of that, every second word out of their mouth is a foul word. But that's what they grew up with, and that became the norm. And when it came my way and I didn't like it and it caused our friendship to split, I was just like, you're just an asshole, excuse my French. But that's what he knew, and I personalized it, and it made us break. And there's a lot of things now that I've learned not to take personally, because at the first portal call, if it makes me feel a type of way, I need to ask myself, is this how I was raised? Is this what I grew up with? Do I understand this? If the answer is no, I have to get that thought out of my head and get it out quickly. Yeah. But it was very difficult for you not to take it personally, because you didn't have a job, for starters. And then you've got somebody who's not being impeccable with their word, and they're saying very hurtful things. So there is no way you could have not taken it, personally. But then the fourth agreement is always do your best not to take it personally. It recognizes that you're human. Do your best not to take it personally. And then I kind of skipped between 1, 2, 3, and 4. If I go back to 3, it then says don't ever make assumptions, because when you make assumptions, you give yourself answers to questions you've not asked, and you magnify your own problem.
Of course.
So the whole idea that, hey man, if I reconnect, she's going to bring and say this, then it's going to make me feel worse than I have already. And because of that, I'm not going to do it. So although she's 4 blocks away, I'm going to avoid her. Can you imagine? She was probably waking up every day, not even thinking about bumping into you.
I know, right?
No, she probably wasn't. She was sleeping nicely. She was waking up nicely, going to work nicely. And all the time, you were feeling the pressure.
Yes, certainly.
And I've been in that situation too. Where I was hell bent on saying, I am never going to speak to this human being. But then whenever I found myself in situations where that person was around, I was the one who was feeling the pressure, and I could tell that they were perfectly okay.
Yeah.
So, it's nice to revisit that book, because I think it just helps us all reposition ourselves. And as we're coming to the end of the year, it might be a nice opportunity just to refresh and say that there's things that we really can control and things that we can't. And for those that we can't, let's extend grace. And I think I really, really, really like your lesson number 1, which is people are largely redeemable. And at the beginning of our conversation, I think I mentioned that they are largely redeemable if they want the redemption.
Yes.
Imagine if Bestie had come and said, okay, do you think people really say this about me? You say, yes, they do. And then she goes, well, tough for them.
Yeah, that would have been a different...
completely different. You guys would be speaking a different language altogether. I don't think you'd have been friends up until now.
Yes, that's true.
Sure. Thanks, Chikunde. I really enjoyed that story.
Thank you
And
for the opportunity.
yeah, and I hope that your friendship grows from strength to strength, because I think there are some real life lessons that you have both learned in this experience.
Of course.
I mean, just to play them back, the first one being that people are largely redeemable. I'll just add a little extra to that to say, as long as they want the redemption. If they don't take it personally and just move away from it. You're dealing with something bigger than you. And then number 2, privilege can thwart the development of emotional intelligence. Yes, correct. I can see how that is, because a lot of people who are in positions of privilege don't see what those who are less privileged have to deal with.
Yes.
Because they don't understand it, so they can't relate to it. And then number 3, yearning does not equal jealousy. Yeah, that one is an interesting, that one. Chikondi.
I'm eager to hear. I really would, on the feedback for this podcast, I would be eager to hear what the other listeners think about that particular lesson, because I think even to date, there have been situations, and I've engaged because I've become more open with the people around me.
Yeah.
And actually, I get a lot of acknowledgement from the people around me just to say, you know what? I have been through the situation and I couldn't relate. I was so happy for my sister when she got a baby, but because I've been struggling to get a baby, I felt like, I was feeling some type of way, which I knew was not jealousy, but I couldn't. Yeah. So I'm eager to hear what the listeners say on that one.
I'm very eager on that too, because I've also just looked up yearning, and they said it's an intense and overpowering desire and longing and craving for something. Which is what you really just wanted. You just wanted to find yourself in a situation where you had a job, you could pay for your own bills, drive the car that you want.
Exactly.
And you'd have been okay, and you'd have had the bestie less in your ear about certain things.
Exactly. And I think this particularly manifests when you have been fighting for something for so long. So if we had finished school at the same time and we'd both been jobless for 2 months and she gets something, I wouldn't probably have really cared about her posting and talking about it every day. But imagine after 14 months of me waiting on getting a job, then someone comes and 3 months in, she's gotten the job.
Yeah.
That yearning obviously was already magnified by the time, but now it's magnified by the context as well. Yeah.
Really appreciate this. I'm just double checking if I got. Yeah. That's the third lesson. I've got it. Man, I can't thank you enough for really sharing this, Chikondi. And for those who've joined us for this episode, you've been listening to another episode of The Feeling Station. I'm your host, Tinto, and I look forward to catching you in next week's episode.
We used to be best friends, used to do good things together. Oh no, but no more.
Just a distant memory.
My homie, buddy, cousin, it all just fell apart. I'm sorry.
Nah, I'm not sorry.
It's just a distant memory. Yeah.